Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Comeback Quotient, a get-real guide to building mental fitness in sport and life, by Matt Fitzgerald. Narrated by Stephen R. Thorne. Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. Marcus Aurelius. Preface. On a muggy Thursday evening in September 1993, Rodney Flowers suffered a catastrophic spinal injury while playing JV football for the Pirates of Lumberton, North Carolina. In the blink of an eye, the 15-year-old aspiring pro bowler went from star athlete to paraplegic. Doctors told him he would probably never walk again. But today, nearly 3 decades later, Rodney is not only walking, but a successful resilience trainer, author, public speaker, and podcaster. And he credits his mind, above all, for having gotten him from where he was to where he is. I was nearly done writing this book, with only a short preface left to nail down, when I received an unexpected invitation to be a guest on Rodney's Game Changer Mentality podcast. It was also a timely invitation, for the not-quite-finished book I set aside to chat with Rodney was all about comebacks, particularly in the realm of sports, a topic Rodney knows a thing or two about. Game Changer was more than just an opportunity for me to speak to an expert about a top-of-mind topic. It served also as a helpful reminder that the highest purpose of sport is not to determine winners and losers, but rather to train the mind for success, a success that goes well beyond sport. After all, though Rodney did regain the ability to walk, his days as an athlete were over the moment his neck snapped on the gridiron on that fateful late summer night. Yet it is the athlete inside him that has brought him so far. The same determined mindset that ensured Rodney, rather than any of his teammates, made the flying tackle on the Southview Tigers kick returner that landed him in a wheelchair was what got him out of that wheelchair eventually. I developed the attitude that whatever it took to regain my strength and ability would be exactly what I would dig down and give to the challenge ahead. He writes in his memoir, Get Up. I am hardly alone in believing that the psychology of success in athletics is also the psychology of success in life writ large. Increasingly, psychologists and brain scientists are focusing their research on sport out of a recognition that it has much to teach us about the human mind and behavior. In a 2016 essay titled, Is Sport the Brain's Biggest Challenge?, Vincent Walsh of the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience at University College London asked, What makes the best the best? There is an opportunity here to treat elite athletes as case studies from which we can make useful generalizations, much as we have for over a century with neuropsychological single-patient case studies. By studying the abnormal, the elite, we may learn about the population. The timing of my interview with Rodney was apposite in another way. We spoke at the height of both the COVID-19 pandemic in the U.S. and the social unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, by a Minneapolis police officer. 8 out of 10 Americans had recently said they believed the country was out of control in a nationwide survey. An entire society, indeed almost the entire world, had been knocked down by the year 2020 and would need to make a comeback of one kind or another. When I started working on the Comeback Quotient in the later part of 2018, I couldn't have imagined what was around the corner. As it turned out, I was affected personally by both of the aforementioned crises, being the husband of an African-American woman and coming home from the 2020 Atlanta Marathon infected with virus du jour, which knocked me flat for an entire month. Yet despite the suffering I shared with so many, I couldn't help feeling that, in a small way, these events justified the huge investment of time and energy I'd made in the book, while also bringing clarity to the project. In particular, the coronavirus George Floyd double whammy underscored my belief that setbacks are inescapable in life, hence that all of us need to possess the ability to pull off a comeback. Some people will come back from 2020 more successfully than others, and a special few will not only survive, but thrive, ultimately emerging better than ever, and in so doing, they will achieve something that amazes those around them. The most important revelation I had in writing this book was the discovery that beneath superficial differences in their individual stories, the special few who prove themselves capable of achieving amazing comebacks are all doing the same thing, going through the same process to get up, to borrow Rodney's phrase, and get moving again, better than before. And although I made this discovery within the athletic realm, it applies elsewhere. Most of the remarkable men and women featured in this book are athletes, but in many cases the defeats and challenges they came back from occurred outside the sporting context, and their comebacks themselves transcend sport. My greatest hopes for this book are, 1, that it is heard by athletes and non-athletes alike, and 2, that every listener is able to apply the inspiration and learning they glean from it to their own life, whether it be in a sport, a relationship, a job, a health crisis, or any other circumstance where a comeback is called for. If you happen to be an athlete, the stories I share here will have a special resonance. And if you aren't, then I encourage you to listen to the Comeback Quotient as one long metaphor, life as marathon, if you will, the same way business people read Sun Tzu's The Art of War or Machiavelli's The Prince. Life really is a kind of marathon, and the secret to coming back from defeats and challenges is the same both on the race course and off, a secret you will soon know as fully as any champion. 1. The ultrarealists. Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. Philip K. Dick. I became a fan of Joan Benoit in a single instant, approximately 12:34 p.m. on April 18, 1983, when she strode past my roadside viewing position in Framingham, Massachusetts, on her way to winning the Boston Marathon in 2 hours, 22 minutes, 43 seconds, a world best time for women. 11 years old at the time, I had come to Boston with my family to watch my father race, having never heard of Joan prior to that day. But when she flashed by me far ahead of all the other women in the race, and behind only 120 of the nearly 6,000 men, I had a new hero. In movement, posture, and bearing, Joan radiated a fearless determination. Her compact frame slanted forward at an aggressive angle, chin lifted in warrior-like confidence, eyes focused up the road predatorially, searching for runners to humble. I followed her exploits closely from that day forward. Joan's next big race was the first ever U.S. Olympic Trials Women's Marathon, scheduled to take place on May 12, 1984, in Olympia, Washington. Having established herself as the greatest woman marathoner on the planet with her performance in Boston, she was favored to not only sail through the trials, but to win gold in Los Angeles in August. But on March 16th, Joan felt a sudden twinge in her right knee during a 20-mile training run near her home in Freeport, Maine. Within minutes, the pain had become so intense that her normally crisp stride degenerated into a ragged slog. Never before had she bailed out of a workout, so she wasn't sure whether or when to stop, but in the end, the decision was made for her. At 17 miles, the leg stopped working altogether. The timing of the injury couldn't have been worse. With the trials less than 2 months away, Joan could ill afford a major interruption to her preparations. Rest and cortisone injections brought only temporary relief, and on April 25th, again unable to run, she flew to Portland, Oregon, to consult renowned orthopedic surgeon Stan James, who prescribed anti-inflammatory medication and more rest. 5 days later, Joan started a test run with high hopes and finished it in tears, having survived just 3 miles. James then advised surgery, a last resort that Joan, who felt certain that something in her knee was restricting its natural movement, leapt at. 17 days before the Olympic trials, James removed from Joan's knee a mass of fibrous material that, true to her intuition, was impeding the joint's normal operation. Putting prudence before fear of losing fitness, Joan dutifully waited 72 hours before testing the results of the procedure with a gentle pool run, which produced no pain. This was followed by a pain-free stationary bike ride the next day and a pain-free outdoor run the day after that. Not a moment too soon, Joan had renewed confidence and even a bit of momentum. But then, on the 3rd of May, just 8 days before the trials, she got a little carried away on her final long run and strained her left hamstring, leaving her with no choice but to take yet another day off. Joan arrived in Olympia having no clue what her body was capable of. Yet although Olympic qualification would require only a top 3 finish, she still craved outright victory, in pursuit of which she seized the lead at 12 miles, hoping to demoralize her opponents and avoid a sprint finish, which had never been her specialty and was even less so now, given the touch-and-go state of her ailing hammy. In the middle third of the race, Joan stretched her lead out to 400 yards. Things were looking good, and when, at 17 miles, she spotted her anxious coach, Bob Seveny, on the curb, she assured him, "Sev, I'm all right." Except she wasn't. At 20 miles, all those missed days of training came back to haunt her. Joan's legs turned to concrete, her pace slowing abruptly from 5 minutes 40 seconds to 6 minutes per mile. Then her hamstring, relatively quiet until that point, started screaming at her, and she slowed down even more. Smelling blood, Joan's closest chasers began to close the gap. Running on sheer will, Joan locked her mind on a single thought: if they catch me, I'm dead, and gutted out the final miles to win the trials by 37 seconds. 3 months later, at the Los Angeles Olympics, a fully fit and healthy Joan Benoit became history's first female Olympic marathon gold medalist. Every sports fan loves a comeback. Muhammad Ali's breathtaking 8th-round knockoff of a previously invincible George Foreman in 1974, restoring a heavyweight title stripped from him 8 years earlier for Muhammad's defiance of a Vietnam War draft order. Monica Seles' gutsy victory at the 1996 Australian Open, 3 years after a horrific on-court knife attack that left her nursing psychic wounds far deeper than the gash in her right shoulder. 39-year-old Tom Brady's surgical dismantling of the Atlanta Falcons' defense in the late stages of Super Bowl 51, delivering his New England Patriots almost single-handedly from a hopeless-seeming 28-3 deficit to overtime victory. Such feats appeal to a deeply human craving for proof that anything is possible, that it ain't over till it's over. By the time Joan won gold, I was a runner myself, having become one exactly 1 day after I watched her streak past me in Framingham. A comeback means even more to a fellow athlete than it does to a mere fan. A fan looks at, say, Bethany Hamilton's improbable win at the 2016 NSSA National Championship 2 years after the young surfer's entire left arm was bitten off by a tiger shark, and thinks, "Wow, that's amazing." I looked at Joan Benoit's comeback from an 11th-hour breakdown to winning the 1984 U.S. Olympic Trials Marathon and thought, "Wow, I want to be like that." While fans are content to be entertained and inspired by great comebacks, athletes want to emulate them, to borrow whatever special quality it is that enables a rare few to conquer when defeat seems certain. After all, a great comeback is nothing more than an extreme version of what we athletes try to do every day, which is to succeed where success doesn't come easily. That's the thing about sports. They're hard. The ancient Greek word for athletic competition is agon, which is the root of the English word agony. That's no accident. Training for and completing a marathon, for example, is agonizing, even if your goal isn't to win an Olympic gold medal, and even if you don't injure your knee 8 weeks before the big race. Because sports are hard, it takes more than physical ability to succeed in them. Mental fitness is also required. While physical fitness enables an athlete to do hard things, mental fitness enables an athlete to deal with hard things, and no athlete realizes his or her full potential without both. But what exactly is mental fitness? I define it as the ability to make the best of a bad situation, and in sports it's almost always a bad situation to some degree. The agony that athletes experience when training hard and competing is really a best-case scenario, or the worst that happens on a good day. And good days are somewhat rare. Most days, athletes are dealing with something beyond just garden-variety suffering, whether it's injury, illness, aging, overtraining, menstruation, the wrong diet, a bad workout, a bad performance, burnout, stagnating fitness, life stress, time pressure, weather, living in the wrong damn place for the lifestyle you've chosen. The list goes on. Some athletes deal with this stuff better than others. Some time ago, I asked my Twitter followers, most of whom participate in endurance sports, to self-rate their mental fitness. Among the poll's 371 respondents, 13% confessed that their mind was a major limiter. 28% rated their mental game as average at best. 48% selected the good, not great option, and the remaining 11% claimed to have Eliud Kipchoge-level mental fitness, a reference to Kenya's legendary marathon world record smasher, renowned for his psychological fortitude. If my Twitter followers are representative of the broader athlete population, then nearly 90% of us are aware that the contents of our head are more of a liability than an asset. And given the well-known tendency of people to overestimate their aptitudes, 83% of drivers rate themselves as more careful than average, for example, it's safe to say that just about every athlete other than Eliud Kipchoge himself could stand to improve in this area. Most athletes have a pretty good idea how to improve their physical ability. It's a simple matter of following proven best practices in training. But very few have a clear understanding of how to improve their mental fitness. Some hire sports psychologists. Still others read books on the topic, or practice visualization or journaling, or use some other mental training tool suggested by a coach or peer or internet influencer. Still others just keep grinding along, hoping it happens on its own. Which way is best? And why does it matter? Before we answer these questions, let's take a moment to consider why the path to physical improvement is so much better understood. Beginning in the early 2000s, exercise scientists began to rigorously study the training practices of elite athletes, particularly endurance athletes, eventually discovering striking consistencies across sport disciplines and geographical regions. Among these shared patterns is the 80-20 ratio of intensity distribution, where 80% of weekly training time is spent at low intensity and 20% at moderate to high intensity. Such consistencies are taken as evidence that, through generations of trial and error, elite endurance athletes have hit upon the training methods that are most effective in developing aerobic fitness in humans. Subsequent studies involving amateur athletes have determined that the same methods work equally well for mere mortals. It stands to reason that what's true for physical ability is true for mental fitness as well. If some ways of dealing with bad situations work better than others, and if one way works best, it seems likely that those athletes who deal with bad situations most successfully do so by means of the same superior method, the psychological equivalent of the 80-20 rule, if you will. Suppose it was your job to identify this method, if indeed it does exist. The obvious approach would be to replicate the process exercise scientists used to identify best practices on the physical side. Step 1 would be to collect a number of notable examples of athletes making the very best of the very worst situations. Step 2 would be to look for common themes among them. There's certainly no shortage of material to work with. Sports lore is rife with famous comebacks, stories of athletes overcoming tremendous challenges to achieve great things. Is there a thread that ties together all achievements of this sort? To find out, you must do more than just review the tape, so to speak. On their surface, these events reveal little about the underlying how. An athlete falls, gets back up, and wins. Resilience. Well, sure, I suppose. But to draw any kind of usable lesson from such examples, you need to dig beneath the surface and look at what was going on inside the athlete's head. Mental fitness is exercised within the mind, after all. Sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? Lucky for you, I've already done it. Ever since Joan Benoit achieved that gritty win in Olympia, I've been fascinated by comebacks. Later, when I became a professional endurance sports writer, I enjoyed numerous opportunities to talk to the athletes behind other great comebacks, get inside their heads, and learn more about how they had experienced them from the inside. These interactions alone did not yield any great epiphanies, however. It's often difficult to perceive a feature that is ubiquitous in one group unless you've got another group to compare it against. For me, that group has been the recreational endurance athletes I've coached since 2001. 2 decades of working with everyday athletes in the morning and writing about exceptional athletes in the afternoon, as it were, has taught me that, in most respects, the two groups are similar. Both are passionate, tough, and intelligent. But there is a key difference between them. Simply put, athletes who fail to make the best of a bad situation turn away from reality, whereas athletes capable of achieving great comebacks face reality squarely. I know what you might be thinking. Huh? And believe me, I get it. Of all the possible psychological discrepancies between everyday and exceptional athletes I might have noticed, this isn't the one I expected either. But having noticed it, I can't unnotice it. When athletes with less than Kipchoge-level mental fitness find themselves in a bad situation, all too often they fail to accept it as real. Or having accepted it, they fail to embrace that new reality. Or, having embraced it, they fail to do what's necessary to address it. In fact, failure to make the best of a bad situation never happens for any other reason. Every time an athlete I work with fails to make the best of a bad situation, I can trace the cause back to one of these 3 steps not taken. Athletes capable of achieving great comebacks are different. Some of them work with sports psychologists and some don't. Some read books on mental fitness and some don't. Some practice techniques like visualization and journaling and some don't. But every one of them faces reality in bad situations. This 3-step process of accepting, embracing, and addressing reality is the sine qua non of great athletic comebacks. The one thing that athletes with the highest level of mental fitness do to overcome major challenges. For the rest of us, gaining mental fitness entails nothing more and nothing less than getting better at this process by following the examples set by these ultrarealists. Ultrarealists in action. The idea that the essence of mental fitness is a certain orientation toward reality may be new, but there is plenty to back it up. A brief look at 3 notable athletic comebacks offers a clearer picture of what it means to be an ultrarealist, which we'll build on later. Comeback number 1, Jeffrey Kamworor. The 2016 World Half Marathon Championships in Cardiff, Wales, were hotly anticipated by running fans as a grudge match between British legend Mo Farah and Kenyan upstart Jeffrey Kamworor. It wasn't just the credentials of the two men that generated so much excitement for the showdown, though they certainly were a major factor, Mo having amassed 5 World Championship titles and 2 Olympic gold medals at 5,000 and 10,000 meters, while Jeffrey came into the race as its defending champion and a 2-time world champion in cross-country. It was also the public smack talk Jeffrey had engaged in before the race, the 23-year-old Kenyan going so far as to guarantee Sir Mo's defeat in one interview. Such bravado was especially brazen given the fact that Jeffrey had never beaten Mo in head-to-head competition, not to mention the fact that the World Half Marathon Championships were taking place on Mo's home turf. The weather on race morning was of the sort that Brits like Mo are accustomed to, and most African runners are not: chilly, wet, and blustery. This may explain why, when the starting pistol sounded, Jeffrey's left foot slipped out from under him, and he sprawled face first onto the slick tarmac, where he lay for 7 long and terrifying seconds as the 16,000 amateur runners behind him began to trample him underfoot, and Mo sped away with the other contenders. As chance would have it, one of the runners in Jeffrey's immediate vicinity at the moment of this absurdly awful start was Oliver Williams, a 30-year-old Welshman who was attempting to set a new Guinness World Record for the fastest half-marathon ever run in a Superman costume. To aid the ratifying process, Oliver wore, in addition to a red cape and an S on his chest, a head-mounted GoPro that captured the newly risen Jeffrey as he elbowed his way past the ersatz Man of Steel and slalomed between slower runners in reckless pursuit of the race leaders. Within 3 minutes he caught them, having blitzed the first kilometer at 4-minute-per-mile pace. The effort took its toll, however. Normally an aggressive frontrunner, the oxygen-starved challenger to Mo Farah's supremacy tucked in behind him for the next several miles, gathering his strength instead of setting the pace. A slow attrition ensued, struggling runners falling off one by one. Mo lost contact just shy of the halfway mark, and by 11 miles, the race was down to 2 men: Jeffrey's countryman, Beaton Kuroki, and incredibly, Jeffrey himself, who surged away to a 26-second victory. Comeback number 2, Mirinda Carfrae. In October 2014, Mirinda Carfrae arrived on the Big Island of Hawaii as the odds-on favorite to win the pro-women's division of the Ironman World Championship. And for good reason. The 33-year-old Australian had smashed the event record in claiming the previous year's title, and had shown no sign of regressing since then, winning the ultra-competitive Challenge Roth Triathlon in July with one of the fastest women's iron distance times in history. In a pre-race interview with ESPNW.com, Mirinda conceded that anything less than victory would be a disappointment. Imagine how she must have felt then to find herself in 8th place at the bike run transition, more than 14 minutes behind race leader Daniela Ryf of Switzerland. No athlete had ever overcome such a large deficit to win in Kona, a fact that the reigning champion was well aware of, saying afterward, "I didn't believe I was going to win. I had to let go of that hope. So I figured I'd try to put together the very best race that I could and change my goal from winning to getting in the top 5. In pursuit of this more modest ambition, Mirinda blasted out of the bike run transition at 6 minutes 30 seconds per mile, exceeding her own course record pace. Despite the aggressive tempo, she managed to pass only 2 other women in the first half of the marathon. But then, at 14 miles, Mirinda scored a 3-for-1, overtaking a trio of competitors in the span of seconds and sliding into 3rd place. And just like that,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?